According to grief counsellors, the loss of a sibling takes longer to get over than the death of a parent. The answer is true.
Now, I like a laugh as much as the next person, but not everything in life is a giggle, and I should imagine losing a sibling falls very much into that category. Sibling grief is really very little spoken about. We've never done it before in 7,500 debates, and yet bereavement counsellors acknowledge it's the mother of all emotions to overcome. Losing a loved one is always going to be a heavy cross to bear, but if you lose your brother or your sister, the experts say you'll tend to suppress your own feelings of grief, as you're going to be worrying more about how your parents are coping with their loss. Can a family ever recover from something like this? Do the surviving siblings feel... do they feel they have to make up for the loss in some way? Special days like Christmas ruined forever. Does it always feel like someone's missing in the home? And then there's the age that we must consider. What if the child was very young when they died? Maybe a new baby can help patch things up in the family. Does it all depend on how old you were when you lost your brother or sister? Experts tell us that very young kids, 4 and under, they don't really understand what death is, so they aren't particularly burdened with grief. Now, Dermot, you're one of 5, but you lost a brother.
Yes.
A younger brother.
Yes.
And I know you write a little bit about it in your book, but
yeah,
not very much.
I don't write very much about it because it's the story doesn't belong to me, and I have to respect everybody else who's involved, all the other family members.
How old were you at the time?
Do you know what? I don't know. I can find out very easily just by asking Mum or Dad.
But quite young?
I was probably 7 and my brother was 6. Our birthdays were on exactly the same day, a year between us. And we were going to school one day and there was a road accident. And so it's a long time ago, you know, it's almost 40 years ago. And it is something that you avoid talking about. It's kind of difficult, kind of funny, when you become prominent or when people want to know about your life because of your work. I've always found it very important not to forget my brother Connor. Always very important to say that he existed, because what's the point in denying somebody's life, but not wanting to talk about it anymore. I do write about it kind of succinctly in the book because it had to be dealt with, and it had a huge effect on my life and the person that I was to become. And I had a lot of, I think, guilt over it because I thought for many years, probably for 25 years, that I treated him very badly and I had done this and I got him into trouble all the time. And it was only... just childish stuff, isn't it? Yeah, which becomes magnified. And I could only remember blaming him and getting him into trouble. And then my aunt, who lives in Billericay in Essex, told me, no, he was brilliant, but he was a brat. And that sorted so much in my life. So yeah, it's a difficult situation, but after writing it, what I realised is there may be a tendency, and there may be a tendency in Ireland, to slightly wallow in grief. And it seems, for me, very nice to... What I've realised is he won't want to be remembered for the way he left this earth. We're all going to leave. And if he felt defined by that, that would be an awful way to be remembered. So what I've learnt, even in these past few weeks, is he was a great little lad, and maybe that's what should be remembered. You know, he had an awful lot of fun in his life, and he'd been really fed up. Can I ask,
I don't know why I'm so interested in this particular element, but big family occasions, were they're obviously going to be different thereafter. Were you as a family acknowledging Connor through Christmases and things like that, or did one just try and move forward and not mention the war, if you like?
He was never forgotten because our birthdays were on the same day. There's still a birthday to celebrate, so he's remembered. But, you know, I get all the phone calls, I get all the cards on my birthday, so it's a time of celebration in the family. Christmas, now, we had 2 younger sisters who were around maybe 3 or 4, or 2 and 4 at the time, and they're not as affected by it. So that's certainly. My sister sent me a text when she read the book, and you know, to say she was in tears reading it, and I said, "Well, does it ring true? You know, the whole book?" And she says, "Yes, but I have a very different experience of life, if that makes sense."
But that, in the way you've just framed it, makes complete sense, actually.
But on the anniversary of his death, yes, that's. And it's not it's never a pleasant day. It's February the 1st, which is a miserable day anyway. And yeah, we never forget that.
As I said, you're not the only person on the panel that's lost a sibling, because I know, Larry, you lost your brother Geraint not that long ago.
Last November.
A little bit older than you.
Yeah, older than me, so a very different experience because we're adults. Yep. I was surprised how upset I was, in a way, because we'd kind of had a difficult relationship. And
that's one of the differences that comes with age, isn't it?
Yes.
Is relationships that can be more challenged.
Yes. But in a way, I mean, he died of cancer and it was quite a short illness. So it was very complicated, my feelings were very complicated about it. And I still felt I needed to protect my mother, and I still felt that she was the one that should be grieving, and in a way I didn't have the right to grieve. But of course she comes from a different generation. She comes from the, well, we won't mention it, and it's all be fine, we'll just get on with things. Whereas my sister and I were the ones weeping, because we're a different era, you know? And I would say that, I don't know, I was brought up, and I do the same with my children, to talk about the circle of life and to talk about leaves fall from the trees. And very difficult when it's a very young child who dies to make that argument. When somebody's in their 50s, it's young, but you know, I can understand that. And so I actually don't think that you spend the rest of your life marking every birthday, every Christmas. You think about them and you think about it's sad they're not here. But I cling to this idea that this is the way, like death is part of life, and that's how you move on. But I'm not the mother, and I think
is your father still with us?
No.
No. So you've lost your father and a brother.
Yes.
Can you? Is there a?
Getting entirely different. It's shocking. When you lose a sibling, it's shocking because that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
You expect to lose your parents, you don't expect to lose a sibling, and it does alter the dynamic of the family. I mean, he was the oldest, my brother, and it feels odd. People say, how many? And I say, well, look, there were 5, and now there are only 4. What do I say? 4 children? I don't know what to say. You know,
David.
I couldn't imagine what it must be like. You know, I'm from a very close family. I have a brother and a sister, and you know, if anything happened to them,
what about grief and how we deal with it? What would be your advice?
Well, it's really interesting, isn't it? You know, grief is a really important process that you go through, and there are lots of phases of grief, you know, which start sort of with shock and denial and anger and so on, and then you kind of work through to acceptance. You never forget. And I think the interesting thing is how old you are at the time that it happens and how close you are and things like that. But you don't ever forget. You learn to live with it. And I think you have to then turn those experiences, as Dermot was saying, into positive ones, saying, actually, we shared some great times. He was a little, you know, rascal sometimes. I gave as good as I got. And I think you then remember those really important memories. But you never, ever forget.
OK. Got loads of calls. As I said, we're trying to give it a little bit of extra time. So let's take them, Kirsty.
OK, first on line 1 we have Sarah.
Good morning, Sarah.
Hello there.
Thanks, first of all, for picking up the phone. I can imagine not the easiest thing to do on a subject like this, but what would you like to tell us?
Hi there. I lost my brother just less than 2 years ago.
OK. How old was he and how old were you?
He was 40 when he died.
Yeah.
And I'm 40 now.
Right.
And the effects were absolutely devastating. I mean, I can really identify, especially with what Larry was saying, because, you know, I lost him as an adult. And I think I had my own grief to deal with, but I also had the grief of my parents.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, on the day of the funeral, I remember thinking I'd lost my brother and I'd actually lost my parents too. And one of the most devastating things for me was to just see my parents hold hands and walk behind the coffin of their son, and just thinking it was the wrong way. It wasn't how things should be. We've gone on to rebuild, and you know, of course, I've often said a light went out in our lives that will never be relit. But you know, we do have to go on, and really, for me, I've just tried to channel my energies into wanting to be able to help other people from something so terrible, to be able to help other people.
That's really interesting. I was reading about Heath Ledger's sister, the actor Heath Ledger, who died too young, and the experts were saying about how she'd opened some kind of foundation, I think, in his name, and how important that was for her to get over something like that. Forgive me for moving on, Sarah, because I think we could probably take each call and do 10 minutes on it. We've got plenty more, so thank you.
Yeah, we have Brian next on line 4.
Morning, Brian.
Morning, Matthew. Brian. Yeah, we spoke a few times.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I had to bury my... we had a funeral for my twin brother on Friday.
Wow, whoa. OK, wow, right.
We're only 47. He died of a massive heart attack. And you know, the last thing you ever expect to do is carry your twin brother's coffin into a funeral, you know.
I bet you don't.
You know, like, and I still haven't got over it or accepted. Everything Dermot said was true, you know. My brother was a brat and whatever, you know, because we were twins and everything like that. So all those memories now are sort of flooding back in, you know. And I'm only like sort of 3 days after the funeral.
David, I mean, look, you said, I know that some of the psychologists said there's like 5 stages of grief, but, well, I mean, 3 days is things are very fresh. I mean,
Totally.
how long does it take for people to get back into some kind of routine?
How long's a piece of string?
It varies completely.
It's so variable on you, your family, your support network, how close you were. And I think one of the really interesting things, and I hear a lot, is particularly with a twin or someone of your own age, is, you know, why him or her, why not me?
Yeah.
You know, and I think the other point, I think Larry made it, which was actually in the circle of life, you expect your parents to die before you. And so for a child to die before a parent, and I think Sarah talked about that kind of bolt out of the blue. It completely fractures the entire family structure.
I just want to... Brian, are your parents still with us?
Yes, they are, yeah.
They are?
Yeah, yeah, you know, they were flying over from Ireland all over the weekend. I said goodbye to my father yesterday. He's flown back to Ireland. But, you know, I'm married as well, and obviously she lost her father recently, like about 1.5 years ago, but her grieving was sort of a bit different than mine.
And it's quite...
And I met my twin brother 2 weeks ago, and I spoke to Matthew. There was a programme on about do twins feel the same pain in that. And 2 weeks ago I met him, and I had this premonition that something bad was going to happen to him.
Crikey.
And I got a phone call, it was Wednesday week, and I was just brought my children back from school, and we were having a great laugh walking up the stairs, and the phone rang. And it was my mum, and she says, and I was laughing because I was having a laugh with the children. And she goes, I've got some bad news. And I just went, what, Sean? And she says, yeah. I says, I knew that.
OK.
Can I say one thing?
Go on, yeah,
I don't know if it's a twin thing or anything, but, you know, I still haven't gone through the grieving period or...
I think it can take years.
Like that, yeah.
But you see, what's so interesting is you clearly are, you know, coping for other people here. You're being really, really strong. And I think you just need to take time for you, because this will sort of take its time.
Okay,
what I want to say is that when my brother died, one of the things that I found most difficult was because I've got children, was that my sons lost an uncle, and it was that relationship that was the most difficult for me to deal with.
All right. Brian, thank you. I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Oh. You're right, Larry. Let's take another call.
Okay, we have Kez on line 5, Matthew.
Kez, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, we're falling apart here, so you're going to have to keep things together for us. What would you like to say?
Well, I've kept my family together ever since my brother committed suicide. And it's only this year, when my father was in hospital from a tree falling on him, that he admitted to me I was his rock when my brother committed suicide 12 years ago.
Did you feel that burden over the last, 12 years? If indeed it was a burden.
I just had my parents confiding in me, and, you know, it's only recently that I myself needed, you know, I've just never, ever been to see a therapist or anything, so I've got my own ways of coping, and that's normally bottling things up, which isn't very good. But, yeah, so I just recently went in a milestone in my life, because it was a big step to talk to my parents.
I bet. It's a big step, Kez. It's a big step to come on television and talk about it. Trust me. I mean, that is a big step. And I did grief counselling. I lost a friend a long time ago now, and I think it's a brilliant thing to do, to sometimes shake you out of a situation. And 12 years is a long time to go through that kind of burden, Kez. Thank you. Listen, I'm going to wrap it up.
Can I just say there are some really good charities out there as well that will help you, and do get some help, and go and talk to people with bereavement care and cruise.
I'm going to try and get some of the details of those stuck online on our website, but I want to wrap this up and give these guys a chance to pull themselves together, and maybe you at home. So let's leave that there.